Welcome back to another episode of Fused Film. That's right, we're back. The fans speak, and we've got a whole new season of Fused Film. I'm pleased to announce I'm your host, Kevin Call, and that's right, we've got a whole new season of Fused Film podcasting for you, and this is episode 1. But before we get to that, let me give you a little bit of tease on what is ahead here in the new season of the Fused Film podcast. So, what do VHS tapes, streaming algorithms, blockbusters, and fatherhood all have in common? This season on Fuse Film, we're going to dive deep into how these stories shape us, how the movie industry keeps trying to reinvent them, and from the glory days of Blockbuster to the billion-dollar streaming wars, from Mighty Ducks to Top Gun Maverick, we're exploring what makes us fall in love with movies and what's been lost along the way. So here's what to expect. So June, we're recording 2 episodes, and the theme is the rewind and rewatch home media era. So really excited to dive into the VHS era that made us. Then we're going to get into how streaming is just a soulless world. We're going to get into the rebirth summer. We've got some great movies coming into theaters with Jurassic World Rebirth, Fantastic Four, Superman. We got to talk about it. We're going to cover it. August, we're going to debut Legacy and Lost. That's our theme. We're going to talk about how Planet of the Apes, this is a movie I've wanted to talk about and a franchise I wanted to talk about for a long time, how that was actually a reboot we needed. So we're going to dive into that reboot of the Planet Apes and how that worked. What has killed Star Wars? What has saved Star Wars? We're going to dive into that. And then in September, we're going to jump into storytelling for adults. Is prestige sci-fi the future? Is everything just IP now? We're going to answer those questions. We're going to dive into that. October, we're going to rethink the system. So when streaming fails good movies, what happens? And then how marketing is losing the plot. So we're going to dive into movie marketing specifically, a passion of mine. And then we're going to round out the year going into franchise finales, lost art of great movie endings, and then in December, rewatchables, why nostalgia films still heal us, and what movies taught us about being a dad. So super excited about a 14 episode season of Fused Film podcasts. All these topics are near and dear to my heart, things that I've been really wanting to talk about for a long time. And as a reminder, you can find us now on Substack. We have a new Fuse Film Substack where you'll be able to find my pitches. You'll be able to see articles I've written about various things. As of late, we've launched 2 pitch articles, one on the Stargate reboot idea that we had, as well as a sort of pseudo sequel to Andor and Rogue One called Shadows of the Rebellion, and how we should continue these sort of spy Star Wars type content offerings for future Star Wars plots. And then we also talked about how the Superman marketing is a massive misfire right now. So go check those out on our Substack, and you can always find us on X, Instagram, and YouTube as well. And joining me as always, because he's been sitting here waiting for his prime introduction, is our co-host of Fuse Film and my dear friend, Mr. Vactor, who also joins us from Trust in the Force, This Comic Cooks, as well as other podcasts where you can catch him through the Vactorverse. Vactor, thanks for joining us and being part of the Fuse Film Network. How's it going, my friend?
Excellent, man. I can't wait to talk all these topics with Kevin Call because Rev Kev is the guy.
Rev Kev is the guy. Well, like I said, welcome to the Fuse Film Podcast, where story meets soul and the fans speak. So in this first episode, I'm going to prime it up here. We're going to rewind back to the era of VHS, where those clunky plastic tapes that never got rewound not only changed how we watched movies, but in my opinion, changed how we fell in love with them. So this episode is called VHS Made Us Because It Did, and it made us into fans. So to set the stage, Mr. Vactor, think about that first movie you ever owned, or the one you just wore out completely. It wasn't just a movie, was it? It was a memory. I think about this all the time. I think about that era where Friday night we're just rolling around and dad would put us in the car and we'd go to Blockbuster Video. And it was like you felt like anything was possible, you know. Yeah, you may have gone there to go see the red boxes on the big shelves lining the store, as we all remember, that had the new releases. But 9 times out of 10, that new release was gone. So you were left finding something in the middle aisles. Maybe it was something that you hadn't found before. It was like a treasure, you know. Ooh, I didn't know this movie existed. And that's that's where the magic happened. What was your ritual like when it came to Blockbuster and rentals and just the VHS era? Set the stage for me. I'm curious what it was like in the Vactor household.
Yeah, so there's a couple different eras that happened throughout the Vector household. My dad was in the Air Force, so we traveled. We were in a new city every 18 months, and the 80s, we weren't in the United States, like the continental United States. We were not near. We were in Japan, Europe, all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad gave me VHS tapes, and those were actually almost like a lifeline to me for American culture. There were things that I wasn't seeing movies in the theater. I wasn't seeing things on TV because we would have one back then. Now, if you go on American Air Force bases now, they've got the internet, they've got cable TV, all of this stuff. Back in my day, we had one channel. It was one English channel. The rest was all either European or Japanese, whatever country we were in. And the
Mm-hmm.
only way that you could connect with your friends and with your family back home was through if they sent you a VHS copy of something they recorded off TV or if it was purchased for you. So I actually remember my dad one time bringing home a box of VHS, and he said he got it from work. So I don't know exactly where these came from, but there was stuff in there that ended up being core memories for me. And to this day, when I think about some of these movies, one of them being The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy, they were
Great.
movies that I watched over and over and over, and I felt like I wore out the tape on these
Mm-hmm.
VHSs, and it really shaped I think a lot of who I am today for a lot of these movies, the types of movies that I like today, the type of person that I am today. A lot of them come from those early influences. So that was one. I think that was my earliest memory of VHS tapes, and then once I got back to the States in the 90s and I was living in the California area, was actually the state that we lived in the most. That was Blockbuster, and later Hollywood Video, which I ended up working
Mm-hmm.
at, was a core memory for me going there every Friday night, every Saturday night, and not only movies but also video games. Those were huge for me to be able to rent a game or rent a movie, and I didn't have to pay, like I didn't have to buy all of these expensive prices. It was, oh, you can rent it for a much cheaper price, play it or watch it and then return it. And so to me that was like, oh, this is perfect. I get to experience all these different things for a much cheaper price. So VHS and Blockbuster and the rental market was huge for me growing up.
Yeah, it was for me. Like I said, our Friday Saturday rituals were very much like going to Blockbuster Video. We had Hollywood as well at one point in time when there was a competitor. Unlike you working for Hollywood Video, I actually ended up working for Blockbuster.
Oh, nice.
So yeah. Actually, my I think it was my junior year of high school through my junior year of college. And when I went to college, it was like seasonal. So I would only work like during the holidays. So summer and Christmas. And eventually I left because it was more of, I had other things I wanted to do and stuff like that. But yeah, like going to Blockbuster, it was like this, like I don't want to oversell it. Like it was a magical thing for me. It was like I felt like home in that place. The blue shirts would come and they'd ask for, can I make you some recommendations? They'd see me pondering over stuff. And as much as those recommendations were great, there was always like the movies that I would always gravitate to as re-rentals. Like Gremlins and Goonies and the Three Ninjas and Surf Ninjas. And, I think summer, it was like significantly more important because that was like the place where we could go and get something that would tie us over for the week. So video game rentals being a big thing. Okay, I'm going to get 3 games. I'm going to have them for the week, and these are the games I'm going to play. But what I remember the most about just the VHS era is like you would find these movies that you just felt like a sense of ownership over. Like every time you went into Blockbuster, it was like, all right, I'm going to run to this shelf and see, is it there? Because that's my
Yes.
movie, and
Scarcity. Yeah.
yeah, that scarcity of like, hey, if the Mighty Ducks wasn't on the shelf, man, it was like a disappointment. But then it was like those are movies that didn't just get watched; they got wore out.
Yes.
I'm going to list a few more. So I said Three Ninjas, Surf Ninjas, Heavyweights was another one, Hook, The
Oh
Sandlot.
man.
And to me, like those movies weren't just like movies to me; they were mine. I felt like they were a piece of my my heart.
Mm.
They were just movies that just felt like I could see myself in them in a lot of ways. And they shaped who I am, and they're there's such personal memories of great summers with my cousin and my brother and things like that. And we're going to get into this in episode 2, but I'll tease a little bit of this now. I just feel like we've lost that. Streaming has sort of stripped us away from the feeling of we have become loyalist fans of something, because what happens is it feels like a lot of things just get lost
Mm.
in the ether that is streaming. So I don't want to go into that yet, because we're gonna really dive into that into our second episode of this sort of this theme topic. But let's transition. I mentioned a few movies just a minute ago: The Mighty Ducks, Heavyweights, Three Ninjas, Hook, Sandlot. I think with the exception of Hook, every single one of those movies flopped in theaters.
Mm.
They did. They were I don't want to call them box
Yeah.
office bombs or anything like that, but they were not hits. They were certainly not the number 1, 2, 3 movie in theaters.
Mm.
And that was something that I feel like the home video market gave us, was an opportunity to discover a movie that maybe failed in theater because your parents didn't take you to go see it, they didn't know about it, the marketing may have not been there, whatever the reason. um, but the home video era gave these properties second life. And because we were able to rent them and there was that sense of repetition and rewatch, we built a cultural connection to it, an emotional connection. I think one of the biggest movies, Hocus Pocus, is often referenced as one of the biggest home entertainment like business cases of all time. Like it
Mm.
flopped in theaters, nobody went and saw it, and it became this massive cult classic. The Princess Bride is another one. The Iron Giant. Um,
Ooh.
these movies became cult. I mean, now I'm saying them out loud, and it's like, wow, they almost feel like cultural icons. Um, and to think that they were bombs in the theater um, says something about what the economic market was in home entertainment back then and the value of the rental market at the time. So let me open up the discussion here. Was there any movies that you locked in on that were huge for you that you later found out were maybe flops? And why do you think those movies maybe worked better at home than in the theater?
Mm. You know, I think Last Action Hero was a big one for me,
Big one.
where
Yeah.
I was, first of all, I was a huge Stallone fan. I was a huge
Mm-hmm.
Arnold fan. And not so much Bruce Willis, but like the 80s action star for me was huge.
Yeah.
Guys who had big muscles, they
Van
could
Damme.
do anything. Yeah, Van Damme. Oh, I love Van Damme because I'm also, I guess that also transitions into, I love martial arts. So he was a big one for me because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this guy, like Bruce Lee is like, he's like the modern day Bruce Lee to me. But any type of like action star in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s probably was huge for me. So when I saw Arnold in Last Action Hero, and that's kind of almost transitioning into his more comedic stuff too. I was like, oh man, this is a guy that I love. It's this fantasy element of the kid and movies, all of these things playing off of each other. And I was like, this is perfect. Then later finding out, wait a minute, this was not a huge hit. This was not like a big box office thing. That was a huge one for me. And I actually still love that movie. I haven't seen it in a while, but that was a one that I was wearing out the VHS, watching it constantly.
Yep.
And it is interesting with the streaming era in particular. I think the loss of scarcity, like you talked about, oh, if they
Mm-hmm.
don't have it, they don't if they don't have that movie on the shelf, you got to pick something else. Same with video games. It's like, oh, this is the most popular thing and I can't get it right now. And let's say if you found it one week, you're like, oh, look, it's here. The thing is here.
That's
And
right.
with streaming, it's like, oh, your parents just have to have an account. If you've got a Netflix account, if you got a Hulu account or whatever it is, there it is. I can have it at any time. I can play it at any time. So the one click, like the instant gratification of streaming is a huge difference between having to go to the store. Let's say before you could drive, you got to get your parents to get you to drive to the store, go get the thing. If it's actually there, have the money for the thing, then buy it, come home, and then you could watch it. That's a huge difference between, oh, click, I'm watching it. And I
Yep.
wonder how that changes our culture now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and again, we're going to get at this in segment 4 of this, and then we'll have a whole episode dedicated to this topic. So I don't want to get ahead of it. But yeah, scarcity is a big piece. I think discovery, lack of discovery is also a big piece. And then I feel like it eliminates the physical ritual of being able
Yes, right.
to find a film and touch and feel it, and
Yeah.
you lose that sense of ownership. I think that's like the other piece.
Yeah,
But
it's like here's a physical
yeah,
thing. It's right here.
that's right. But going back to flops, like turn favorite, I think that's the other thing is that, movies don't hit some people on the first viewing, but like with VHS, with rental, it gave you an opportunity to have a second, third, or even a 33rd shot at viewing something. And I remember like there was lots of movies that I would try, like the Slapshot movies or like the
Hmm.
uh what was it, the Police Academy movies and stuff. These are movies that like my parents would
Oh,
never own or want to have in the house for whatever reason, whether it was shelf space or something else. But it was like, okay, those are movies I could go back and rent. They didn't like horror movies. They thought Gremlins was kind of a horror movie. So it
ah,
was like I had to rent that one. They didn't like Tremors, but I would rent that one because I really liked Kevin Bacon. Um,
hmm.
and, so it was just like, I feel like there was so much value to being able to walk into a Blockbuster and to be able to see that. I think my sister rented The Land Before Time 1,000 times. But here's where I'm going with this. So not only are these flops turned, I'm going to throw some numbers, right? The Mighty Ducks, it's a great example. Cost them $10 million to make, and they were in theaters in 1992, made a total of $50 million in a longer theatrical window than what you would likely see today for a movie like that. But that's a call it $10 million. So subtract that off the 50. That's a $40 million revenue. So you got a $4 payback for your dollar that you spent. Now I don't know how much they spent in marketing, so it could maybe it's a 1-to-2 ratio, maybe 1-to-3. I don't know, but where I'm going with this is when it ended up in rental and home video space, the total receipts, I guess, for that film ended up totaling up to $175 million.
Hey.
So they performed much better in the home video market than they did in theaters. To give a comparison, we're now in 2025. The Mighty Ducks re-releases the brand on Disney Plus, The Mighty Ducks Game Changers, and that show was a flop even on streaming. And now you can't even get the show through Disney Plus because it costs them more to host it through the platform
Dang.
and pay the royalties or the tier fee or whatever the fee model is that they have with their talent and the creators. Um, so right now you can't even stream it. So it's like nobody has a chance to find that movie or that show and let it grow over time, the way that its predecessor did. And to me, that is the crux of what we're talking about, and that's what we'll get into episode 2. But that was, I think, the other miraculous thing about the VHS world and even the DVD world is that you were able to see flops turn favorites. I think it also gave opportunities for content that maybe didn't have a chance to go into theaters to come out. Like Blockbuster had the exclusive deal, like with Boondock Saints and stuff like that. Those movies found cult followings because of the rental market and things like that.
Word of
But
mouth. Yeah.
I think what we're going to get into this next segment here is, you know, the movies that became flops. There's that, but when movies don't hit us on the first viewing or uh, anything like that, there's that rewatchability. And here at Fuse Film, we always talk about we're the fans that speak. We're fans. We became fans of stuff. Well, how did we become fans of it? Is because of repetition, rewatchability. We kept coming back to these moments, to these scenes, to these characters. And then they would expand. Okay, one day it's Stallone and Schwarzenegger, and then the next day that big muscle bound 80s action hero gets replaced by Superman. Okay, and now it's Iron Man, and now it's Marvel, and it builds, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so to frame this, like, repetition wasn't just allowed, it was expected. That was the whole premise of like the VHS era.
Right.
um and it allowed us to memorize lines, it allowed us to reenact scenes, we bonded with these characters. And like I keep saying, there's this physical level of ownership that we felt like we had with these movies that then led to that emotional investment. um so my question is, like, what's a movie that you could still quote front to back, like from
Ooh.
that era? And
Well,
do you think fans today rewatch movies the same way we did? I mean,
yeah.
streaming does allow for that, but I feel like it's not the same. You watch it once and then it's kind of lost to obscurity because the algorithm starts to recommend new things, you know?
Yeah. Man, it's kind of a difficult question without knowing specifically the audience, because I think there's one section of the audience today that movies are like too long. They're watching
Yeah,
TikToks, they're watching shorts,
sure.
and even the TV shows I've noticed for younger kids, instead of 30 minutes, they'll be 12 minutes. There'll be a shortened attention span. So I don't know what that's going to translate into with our children.
Yeah.
Are they going to like movies the way we like movies? So that's an interesting one. That's one thing to think about. But as far as, like, let's say if we're talking about us for
Yeah.
today's movie buff or movie fan, I think we are seeking out a lot of physical media. Like, there's a lot of people that I talk to that they're into preserving and having a library at their house so that if it gets taken off of streaming, they have it there. And even if you have the streaming, let's say, even if it's available for you, what if your power goes out? What if the internet goes out? Like, what if you have all these things? You have the actual thing there, and the scarcity is not a factor. It's not something that, oh, if it gets taken off streaming, I still have it. And the rewatchability, I think, is a huge thing for our minds and our memories of those things from the 80s stretching out almost. I think when I look about, sometimes I'll watch a movie and say, wait a minute, I thought there was a lot more of insert whatever, Superman flying or Arnold punching through walls or whatever it is. And you think about it and you're like, oh, wait a minute. It's really just that one scene, but I watched it so many times in my mind. I'm thinking that it was an expansion of that thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of those type of things that are interesting. You asked like what was one that I could quote. My favorite movie of all time is Back to the Future. So I'm
Yeah.
quoting that constantly to people in my everyday life. Like I'm
That actually
talking
got
to
quoted in a
people.
meeting that I was in the other day at work. Like my boss goes, "You're going to see some serious shit." You know, it's like perfect.
It is amazing how a movie lexicon or movie dialogue gets into our brains. And then, today we have memes and GIFs that keep these things alive.
Sure.
But it's so interesting. Those moments are so impactful on us as humans that we're constantly referencing them, and that's just becomes the way we speak. That's becomes the way we express ourselves, is through things that we're familiar with. And so
Yeah.
movies, if we're watching them constantly, it's like, oh, I'm referencing this scene or I'm referencing that dialogue from that movie. So yeah, actually the whole Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3, I'm constantly quoting. And I think it's because I had those on a loop. I had that box set on VHS, and I watched it over and over and over again. Star Wars was the same way, the original trilogy box set, and just constantly playing them. And I didn't even think about it as a kid, but now as an adult, I'm like, man, I watch those things a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I wonder, like you're bringing up IP that is from the VHS DVD era, right? Star Wars, Back to the Future, all that. So those were movies that were played over and over in homes all across America by, when we were kids. I do wonder, the generation between us and our kids, do they have the same level of appreciation for whatever IP is that they find interesting? Um, like I'll use
Like,
Sonic as an example.
hmm.
Like, is there a group of 13-year-old boys out there quoting Sonic the way we quote Back to the Future? Um, or is it, I saw it in theaters, whatever, or, I'll catch it on, like, to your point, devices, all of those kind of things that exist now. This new generation is consuming content very differently than we did. Um, we had what we had. Um, Repetition was almost uh, needed out of a sense of survival, because again, going back to, sometimes you didn't have an opportunity to get something new, so it was, you just went back to the old well. But the cool thing about it is you never got annoyed at it. I can't
Hmm.
tell you how many times I watched Three Ninjas over and over and over, or Karate Kid, or
Yeah.
Sidekicks, or any of that. And I was in my, sort of martial arts stage of my movie watching, but then there was certain IP, right, that were just staples. It didn't matter, how many times I'd seen it. Star Wars, Back to the
Indiana
Future, Jurassic
Jones.
Park, Indiana Jones. So to me, like, rewatching it wasn't a passive thing, it was formative, right? It's how we built our taste, um, which is how we became fans. And it just
Yes.
makes me wonder, like, are kids today being robbed of being able to become a fan of something because of the world that we've created for
Hmm.
them with streaming?
Yeah.
I just, like,
I,
I wonder that. I do wonder
yeah.
that. So I think that's a great bridge into our final segment here for this episode, which is what we lost and streaming forgot. Streaming gate gives us everything, right? Like, that was the promise. We don't have to own anything. It's there. It's a full digital library that we can access at our fingertips. But I think what often happens is that we watch it once and we forget it. Um, so the things I end up going and rewatching on streaming are the things I used to watch on video, right? So Back to the Future, Jurassic Park, uh, the Marvel movies, all of these things. Those are the ones I tend to rewatch a lot. But like The Gray Man, good movie, Chris Evans, uh, and Ryan, whatever the heck his name is, Ryan Gosling. And see, I could barely remember his name for a second, but it was like, good action movie. But I haven't seen it except for once. Streaming becomes a watch it once and forget it. Whereas we used to rewatch until the tape broke and then we go buy
Yeah.
another tape. That was the other thing. I missed this point earlier. I want to catch it now here on the back end is we would rent movies. We would rent movies so much to the point then you would buy it. It's like,
Oh
all right,
yeah.
it's costing us more to rent it. Let's go ahead and own it. And I remember my dad would say that. He's like, okay, $250. I've rented it 16 times. It's now like $20 for that movie. And then you get like the stupid late fees. And it's like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to buy the movie and you guys can watch it anytime you want, you know? And I think that a lot of people did that, right? It was like, well, I wasn't sure if this was worth owning, but next thing you know, you've rented it 17 times. Okay, I'm just going to buy the tape. And a Blockbuster would, I thought it was genius model where they would have the resale, right, of rented movies. They would then like wrap them up, put them in the bin, and you could get them for like, three previously viewed movies for like $5, or something like
Yeah.
that. It was crazy. Um,
Which,
and
you know, it's funny
go ahead.
about the cost, because I think you and I grew up around a similar time, and we just thought, oh yeah, renting is much cheaper uh than, purchasing. But I remember coming across a fact that in the 70s, VHSs and VCRs were like astronomical costs. When they first came out, it was like $1,000 to $1,400 for a VCR, which with inflation today's price, that's like $4,000. And then the
Mm-hmm.
actual VHSs were like 80 to $100. And I'm thinking about that and I was like, man, yeah, of course people are renting. That's probably why the rental market also grew, because if you're renting for, let's say, $5 versus, oh, it's $120 to buy the actual VHS, in the early days, that was that. When I came across it, I was like, what in the world? Why were they so much? And especially if you
Mm-hmm.
think about the quality of VHS versus, like, let's say 4K Blu-ray today, and it's like, man, it's crazy how far the technology has come.
And again, we'll talk about this in the next episode, but one of the things that streaming bothers me about is when you would buy a DVD. Which, by the way, and we'll talk about. I'm so teasing everything for the second episode, but like the DVD Blu-ray era of the home entertainment market was the most profitable era of 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 home entertainment ever. So we'll go into the economics and the business side of that. But what I don't like that streaming has is like there's no bonus content. There's no director commentaries. There's no anything. I don't want to get ahead of that episode. We'll talk more about it, but those are things that bother me. But as you know, going back to the what we've lost, I think we've teased this question: do we think kids today have their movie the way we did? Like, do you think that there's a sense of pride and ownership and love and fandom for something the way that we had it, or is it just again the way that they're trained because there's so much content, so much access, so many different things? It's kind of like just consume, 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 instant gratification, move on to the next thing. It's almost like we've made it too disposable,
Yes,
too commoditized.
100%. Yeah.
Um, and so I guess this is how we bridge to the next episode because we're running out of time here. Is did streaming replace VHS or did it erase what made being a fan of a movie and finding a movie or a TV show so special? I think it's the latter. I truly believe that.
Yeah, man. I There is something that I'm hoping I can show my son when he gets older of, hey, this is what it was like to watch something. Because when I think about my parents, they didn't have any type of home entertainment. It was, you either watched it in the theater or you caught it on a rerun on TV later. But there was
Yeah.
no on demand. There was no,
We didn't
I
have
want to
cable. We
watch
didn't have any of
this.
that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for it's like, it's so interesting to think about as each generation comes, what their home entertainment situation is going to be like. And for my son and for yours also, I wonder what is that going to be like, because we can't predict it exactly what it's going to be. Nobody, I think, was thinking about the internet when we were growing up. Like we weren't thinking about what the way that we were consuming is going to change. So I'm very interested to see what happens. But VHS was, I think, a special period to me, as well as DVD. That was
Yeah.
I'm just like you with the special features and the extras, so I can't wait to talk about that. But I do hope someday that I can kind of teach my son to slow down, not consume things so fast, and cherish what you're watching at the moment you are.
I agree, because I think us cherishing and finding things in the home entertainment world through VHS and DVD made us want to go to the theaters. I think there is a
Yeah.
cyclical piece there. And when you look at the world of Hollywood today, where, box office has shrunk, it's not what it was pre-COVID, even, like, there is a significant concern as a fan of these things that I have, that Hollywood's imploded itself.
Yeah.
So we'll talk more about that. And I think it all starts with how streaming has created a soulless, movie experience for consumers. So here we go, guys. This is our first episode of the new season of Fuse Film. What was the first movie you wore out on VHS? Share your favorite rental memory or repeat tape, and tag us on social or drop a review with your go-to Friday night, Saturday night movies that you had when you were a kid. And next time on Fuse Film, we'll dive into streaming is the new VHS, but with less soul. We'll break down the shift from ownership to access and how it's killing the kinds of movies we love the most. This is Fuse Film, where the fans speak. Catch you next time. And remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as find us on Spotify and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow us on social media channels like Instagram and X, where we can engage with you throughout the week and day. And we want to hear you as the fans speak to us. So we're excited, and you can catch Vactor wherever Vactor is in the Vactorverse. Vactor, you want to plug yourself real quick?
Yeah, if you're into comic books, This Comic Cooks on YouTube. And if you're into Star Wars, Trust in the Force on YouTube.
Thank you again. And this has been the Fuse Film Podcast, where the fans speak.